as well as new in a European context.
Yeah.
And therefore, we must never take it for granted. So, yeah, all the answers are not in yet, but we're doing a great job discovering what is really going on.
Yeah.
Behind the veil of the silence and the veil of national security and so on.
Yeah. And do you think that this is, if we are to tie this to the church, I mean, which after all has dominated our world for,
right.
I guess, I don't know, 1,500 years or so, maybe more, and the church in the form that it is now, of course. But I mean, it is fairly recent also, I think, that not that the power of the church has left, but it has shifted towards other things, and now the possibility has now opened up to even be allowed to study things, and how do you think that the church has this powerful role to play here, so to speak?
Absolutely. In my work, I'm always talking about the Atonists and the cult of Aton, and the worship of the dark side of the sun and the dark side of light. To me, that's what Vatican is. The word Vatican, by the way, which again, we're not insulting Roman Catholics here. We're not talking about a person following a religion. The religion of Catholicism, as followed by an ordinary person, is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the institution known as the Vatican. And the word Vatican, or Vaticanus, means place of divination or place of sorcery, implying that these individuals use magic and use divination. And anyone whose eyes are open, who goes even as a tourist to Rome and looks at the symbolism there, the 13 famous obelisks and the work of Gian Lorenzo Bernini and many of the other great artists and all the occult symbolism there, the skulls and bones that are almost on every corner, one can see that there's something ritualistic in nature going on. They have to open their eyes a little bit and see behind the veil of why is it that the Pope, for instance, wears the yarmulke on his head, and why does he wear? Why has the Pope's been seen wearing symbols of the what looks like the breastplate, the Urim and Thummim of the Hebrews, the Jews, 12 breastplates of all of the symbolism that's there. And you're right. What we're calling the Vatican there is a hybrid. It has hybridized many different organizations that come under its power. It has many tentacles. It has many lieutenants. So that if you chop off one arm, you see, it grows it back. It has so many. In fact, the whole of Protestantism is nothing but a creation of the Vatican.
Yeah.
The whole of the New Age movement, by the way, is a creation of the Vatican. The American government is controlled by agents of the Vatican.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, Michael, but for anyone who doubt this, why do you think that they, what if I just to ask a rhetorical question here, why would they create something that on the surface at least is against the Vatican?
Well, you see, this is done because it's very important on the surface to appear that you have a rival. The world controllers create their own rivals. They're called faux rivals. It's just the same as the old conflicts that you find in any country of the world. It's the same idea that warring factions are funded by the same hidden hand, which is a fact that has come out. It's the same thing. If you don't create, it's like a chess game. If you don't create your own nemesis, then you have the problem of having the real nemesis come and fight you.
Yeah.
What you do is you create a faux enemy, because in doing that, you're in control of the enemy. It's like a rigged fight. It's like a rigged boxing match.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you might have, a giant come out to fight you who you haven't funded, and they can't afford that.
Yeah.
When we realize the incredible power of this group and the intelligence and the almost the strategical power is to realize that they want to wipe out their legitimate opposition, and they create their own opposition. And this is what is going on in politics all over the world. And the people are basically brainless enough to accept this, and therefore nothing changes.
Yeah.
Nothing at all changes. Just a few more, so-called privileges are thrown our way for which we have to pay in blood.
Yeah.
Until we wake up to realize a very simple fact, and that is both sides of the political spectrum are funded by the same hidden hand. Their symbolism tells you that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing up the ladder. So in wars and in political strategies and even in larger political theological conflicts, it is extremely healthy to, their idea is to create a faux nemesis so that you don't have the real thing ever rise up. Because people will identify with the full enemy, and therefore nothing will ever change. It's a very, very good strategy. And, you know, my entire work is prompted by my concern about this because I'm Irish. And I'm fully aware, unlike most Irish people, of who has desecrated that country in ages past. The book Irish Origins of Civilization is not just some, you know, some book I'm throwing together because I really have nothing better to do.
No,
this is part of a, you know, 20-year research to discover the travesty of why there has been death and mayhem and murder and desecration in that country from the time of the Christianity got there onwards.
Yeah.
And who it is that has obscured the true religion, the true solar, stellar church in that country. That most people will live and die in Ireland and not understand the beauty and the majesty of that country. And when I talk about Ireland, I am including here Scotland, and I'm also including Scandinavia. Because this old Scots-Irish Druidic tradition extended from the north of Scotland in Argyllshire. You know, most of the Celtic people, the pure Celts, lived in Scotland, Ireland, and also were very prominent in Scandinavia. Round towers of a Celtic design, you see, have been discovered there. So this tradition that we're talking about, that very few people have ever touched upon, is not there anymore. It was wiped off the face of the earth. The whole Druidic order, as we said in one of the other programs, the word Irish was not ever spelt with an I. That was a little bit later. And the word IR, like in Irish, means the sacred. Means sacred. But before that, it was actually pronounced AR, Irish, or Aria. The the Aryans.
That's
so the understanding is that the true Aryans hasn't really much to do with ethnicity or even race. It has to do with theocratic standing and status.
Exactly.
Because we talked about the falsity of this idea that there's been a movement of history. Remember, the great taboo subject is you never ever question, you never question religion, and you never question that the elements of civilization moved from the east to the west. Well, that's exactly what my work does question, and it's time for the alternative historians to really, really understand this and to follow in line with the great scholars like Commons Beaumont and Conor McDowry to absolutely make understood that it was the Irish civilization coming out of Ireland, the descendants of Atlantis, who brought the elements of culture into the lands of the west and into the lands of the east finally, and that there was Druidic colleges, Druidic stellar solar churches that spread out from Ireland and England. In those days it was Britain, out into Scandinavia and down through all the other cultures of the world. Now this has been thoroughly covered up. When any Eastern, peoples are telling you about the Arya and the famous one, the noble ones, in exactly the same way as the South American Mexicans and the South American Indians will tell you that they were visited by the Pahona, the great white brothers, you see. Or the Hopi Indians even mention it. Well, it's the same thing in the East. How can you be told in the Americas that the civilization, the great ones, the great medics, and the great healers and the great teachers were coming from the East, but then you come to the Eastern Europe and they're telling you they did it?
It's ridiculous. It doesn't. And we said that we would talk a little bit about the characters in the Bible today and how it has been concocted as a cover for this Cult of Aton. And I mean, just as you say there, I know that I have myself read a few articles that are have the undercurrent and suggest that people like Abraham came from Eastern Oriental countries or Hindu origins, and I mean according to I mean, do you think that this is entirely wrong here, or
Yes. Nope. They've barely got further than underwriting the same old story that has been handed down to us by the Vatican. In 2,000 years, barely nothing has changed. There's been a little speculation based on the etymology, but people just don't draw the strong enough conclusions. And it doesn't matter, though, because these conclusions were already drawn at the turn of the century by the great Conor McDowry. You see, we have always gone backwards when it comes to scholarship. The great authors that wrote on the Irish origins of civilization have already written on a lot of this. And their work has been suppressed. If we don't know truth, it's because it has been, ground to the dirt. We have scholars like Gerald Massey and Commons Beaumont and Conor McDowry and Anna Wilkes, the people that I follow in the footsteps of, that I mentioned on the the website and in the forthcoming book, who've already talked about all of this. And that Abraham, his father, for instance, Abraham's father was Terah, T-E-R-A-H, which is very close to the Irish Celtic Tara.
Yeah.
So if anything, if one really wanted to draw some major conclusions, there's equal evidence for saying that he had Celtic ancestry than anything else.
Yeah.
But the actual fact of the matter is that the patriarch Abraham, in exactly the same way as his descendants, Jacob, Isaac, and Joseph, and these individuals, what the sum of my work regarding this is that, no, they were not in any sense, wanderers out of Canaan who just happened to turn up in Egypt, but that these individuals were themselves a very powerful pharaonic dynasty that had arrived in Egypt in the 13th dynasty. This is about 1700 years BC. And the group that I'm talking about was known as the Hyksos people, Hyksos. And this word Hyksos was deliberately misinterpreted by Egyptologists and people who studied Egypt for many, many years, for many decades. And so the Hyksos was never paid any mind until more recently with the work of Mustafa Gadala and Ahmed Osman, and also a man called Ralph Ellis, the English writer Ralph Ellis, who have cracked the code. And basically, it's amazing too, because the first person, one of the early people who actually tried to expose a lot of this was actually the great Sigmund Freud, believe it or not. Yeah, the German psychologist.
Yeah.
Was one of his last books, written in 1930, I think, was a book that talked about Moses, trying to prove that Moses and Akhenaton were the same person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we have this information. And do you know that the great Immanuel Velikovsky, another one of the great, probably the most suppressed scholar of all time, he also wrote a book on Moses and the Akhenaton concept. So there has been books and literature out there that have totally refuted the official stories that were told about these patriarchs of Judaism, the patriarchs of Islam, because don't forget that Abraham is considered the patriarch of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam.
Yes.
So we are dealing with something very powerful here. And the ignorance factor is very, very high. People have just taken on faith a certain amount of stuff. Now, the Abraham, in short, just to answer your question, turns out to be a pharaoh from the Hyksos dynasty that lived in the northwest part of the Delta region in Egypt and was an extremely wealthy and very powerful pharaonic individual with a court and with his own dynasty, with his own coterie. And it has now come to light through the work of these authors that I'm mentioning that there were these, what are known as Israelite pharaohs of Egypt. Yeah, and this is later on, in order to hide and disguise this, that the Bible, which is nothing but a book of Freemasonry, the Bible is nothing but a pharaoh's book. It's a book about pharaohs, written by pharaohs, originally. Because they say that Moses is the writer or author of the first five books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, the Torah. Well, listen up. If it can be proven, as the great Sigmund Freud was stating, and as Immanuel Velikovsky and as other writers, and now as I am working on to fill in the details, to sort of give the, I'm trying to, restoring the frieze to bring the colors more into vividness and explain in a modern context.
Sure.
If it turns out that Moses was in fact Akhenaten, one of the most powerful pharaohs who ever lived, then we got to understand once and for all that there's nothing Judaic about the Bible. The Bible is a book of the pharaohs written by the pharaohs and later edited, tweaked, skewed by the Francis Bacons, you see, and the Josephus and the other editors who wrote on the Bible were merely fixing it and hiding it and concealing it and changing it, because there's been hundreds of translations even of just one single passage. So we must understand that when we pick up a Bible today from the table, it is certainly not the Bible of the ancient world. There are so many translations. But from day one, what we have to understand when it comes to the questioning of all of this, is that we have from the writings of the great leaders of the secret societies themselves and their commenters. So I don't care if it's Madame Blavatsky or if it's Giuseppe Mazzini of the Illuminati or Albert Pike or if it comes from the Duke of Brunswick. We have writings or George Washington. We have from their own writings statements that say we are not the head. We are subservient to forces that are unseen, that operate above us. So my interest, especially inspired by people like Jordan Maxwell and